Hello, this is me, Tic Tac. I'm a runner of Shadow of the Colossus, and today I'm going to show New Game Plus IMG, a category which hasn't been shown a lot in the marathon so far, since it's in comparison fairly new, since it includes like glitch, which is the only real big glitch in Shadow of the Colossus. If you have seen any other Shadow of the Colossus speedruns and categories, most of the runs barely include any glitches at all. Like the standard 90% run maybe has like 2 of them, very minor ones. But this is the only real glitchy category where you actually skip Colossus fights. The only marathon I know where this has been shown off so far was a Japanese one by IGT, and he is one of the people that has actually found the glitch from the Japanese community, which were mostly Gucci, Apso, and Odawara, who developed this one. So yeah, I'll get right into it, and I'll try my best to explain as we go. For that I need a very specific save, which should be this one. This is the save that includes the full stamina, all the items, as well as the Dormant Sword, which will be very important for the playthrough. I guess I'll start right away in 3, 2, 1, go! Okay, so first of all, New Game Plus as a category in general. For New Game Plus, the only rule you have is that you can set up any save you want for the category and just play through all the items, which leads to the moment where you basically one-shot all of the Colossi. So a usual New Game Plus no IMG playthrough would just kill all the Colossi by one-shotting them. It's a very fun category because it still includes all the skips, but it gets rid of all the stabbing, let's say. All of the stabbing things that you can do. IMG is very different in that, and why we will get to later. But the first Colossus that you fight, which is Valus, is very standard. It's basically the same as in any playthrough, where I will just do a few little tricks on the parkour section here to start off, by using the force to jump up here, using specific positioning to jump up here, and then another little trick where I get here and use a little pixel walk, which is probably the most difficult one. Ah, got it, perfect. So this is the run-up, and Valus is the Colossus that we kill by triggering one of his animations, make him fall, and during that fall we can actually move, and with that we can climb directly onto his face during the cutscene. It's one of the very cool tricks that you learn when you start out the game, and it's very consistent, but cool to show off, as we see we're here already on his head, and a little stab because this is New Game Plus and he's done. As you see, I didn't have to charge the stab almost at all because I had full stamina, but that will change very quickly, because I will start now explaining the glitch. And there's a very specific reason that we started this playthrough in normal as opposed to easy. That's because on normal you actually get the time attack statues. And the way the glitch goes is we load up time attack while in the menu. And that allows us to basically store the fight information, I guess, in some kind of way, which makes the game think the fight is still going on while you're actually not in it. And after doing this, we will normalize with the state of that fight back to the Colossus we actually want to fight. And yeah, it will make a lot more sense when I actually show it. So let me get to Barba, which is the one we will do the IMG glitch on. So here I go into the item menu, and yeah, that's it. I basically entered the item menu while I was praying, so I could control Wonder while the menu was still up. And so now we are in the Barba fight. I will leave the Barba fight immediately and quit out of the game and reload it. And by doing this, Barba is somehow... well, not Barba, but the previous Colossus, rather. I don't know why, but that's how it works. It's still stored in the memory somehow. And then, once we go and fight the actual Colossus we want to fight, both the Colossi will be killed off at the same time, which is the crazy thing about it. Okay, so this way I will go to quad next, since it's the one we want to fight. Okay, that didn't work. The timing of that one is very weird at times. Oh, now I had it, but you can't be too fast here. It's a very precise input. I was surprised that it worked the first try beforehand. There we go. Whew. Yes, hitting that window can be very weird, because it feels like you can do it every time, but sometimes you just are like a little off, and that happens. But it's fine. Okay. You might have noticed that our stamina and health went back to the base stats. That's because we entered that fight in the time attack, and the time attack has base stats on everything. We also lost all items, and we don't like that. So what we will do now is actually go to the spot where you would usually get the dormant sword by walking down, and the game just gives it to you. So we just prayed at a wall, and the wall gave us the item, the strongest item in the game. Don't question it, it's just the way it works. So, to summarize what we just did, I loaded up basically Avion through the Barber fight in the memory, then I reversed it back to Quad so we can actually fight Quad in the overworld, and what will happen next after I kill Quad is that both Colossi will be dead, according to what the game believes. And with this glitch we could also go to Malice immediately, but it wouldn't actually end the game, so the game still checks if we beat all the Colossi to actually trigger a final cutscene. But yeah, without further ado, Quad. That's another Colossus that uses a little... well, I wouldn't say glitch, it's more of an exploit. You trigger the cutscene from the top, and by that you can jump onto the Colossus immediately instead of doing the whole intended part by shooting with feet and climbing up. There we go. And since we have the dormant sword, we can actually one-shot this one. I thought, but somehow we didn't. Okay. Maybe I misremembered the exact way you can do it, but doesn't matter. We are already on the second sigil. The dormant sword isn't quite as strong as before because we don't have the full stamina, but it still can one-shot with sigils, so that's helpful. And here we are. Basically, instead of one Colossus down, it's 3 Colossus down now, and that trend will continue. And the very cool thing about all of this category is also that we can actually choose which Colossi we fight. And most of them are easy ones that are closer by, but some of them we have to choose harder ones because they are closer to get to. It's basically optimizing for speed rather than difficulty, which will get clear once you see which Colossi we actually fight. So next up we have to Reminiscence mode Phaedra. No, Gaius actually. Gaius? No, Kuro. Kuro. God, I got confused in my notes there because it's very specific ones you have to do. So Kuro. See, this time it worked first try. And now a little interesting fact about this category is that it can only be done with the DLC, which gives you the extra items, because otherwise you couldn't navigate the item menu while all the items that you have are lost. Which, is unfortunate for the American players of this one, because there you can't actually buy the DLCs in the shop, the PS4 shop for some reason. There you actually need the collector's edition to have those items, so it's quite a weird one. Well, I guess you could buy the EU version though if you really wanted to run this. Okay, Anyway, same thing, we go back to Gaius, since we want to fight... No, actually. There's another part of the trick, which I almost forgot. It's good that I remembered. We actually can. As you see, these are the ones that I killed. You can actually see the Colossi that I killed on the map ahead of time. So, yeah, the glitch worked as intended. But yeah, I almost went to normalize the Gaius, but fun fact, the Colossus statues for the time attack are not the only ones that are possible to use for normalization, and that will get abundantly clear in the next one because it's a crazy one. So once again, I get the Dormant Sword, which is important to kill the Colossi faster. But now, if I went to Gaius the normal way, entered the fight and killed him, it would glitch out the game, it wouldn't actually count the extra Colossus. So all of this would be useless. But there's another way you can enter the Colossus fights, which is preying on the Colossi corpses for reminiscence mode. There's a couple advantages for that. It's that you don't lose the items and stamina you have, which is cool. And also, yeah, some of them are faster to reach, I guess. But this one is a very special one for Gaius. Because, well, the Gaius corpse is on the perimeters of the Gaius fight. So what will happen now is we will enter the Gaius fight and then go to Gaius' corpse while Gaius is fighting us, and then do the reminiscence thing just to drop back into the Gaius fight and restart the Gaius fight. It's absolutely ridiculous, but this is the fastest way to do it. Yeah, it's very, very cool. So here we are entering the Gaius fight. And all of this, once again, is to make those Colossi kills actually count for the game itself. And if you looked at the map closely, you saw which ones we killed already, which was not only Avion, but Hydrus, because Hydrus is currently the fight stored, since we since we did the IMG glitch on Kuro. So a lot of things are going on right now. And honestly, I can't believe that the Japanese players actually figured this one out. It's fantastic as a glitch, and was the first time ever the game actually had a crazy sequence breaker like that. Still only for the IMG category, since this is the only one where you can access all of those things. Like the time attacks, so any percent normal still remains the same. And as you see here, Gaius and Gaius. We have two Gaiuses right now. Here he's in real life, and here he is his corpse. But the glitch is performed the same way, just a little time pressure there. A little time pressure. There we go. I was getting a little worried, because once he hits you, that's already kinda iffy. But here we are in the fight, in the past. We go out of the fight, back to the future, and jump back into the Gaius fight, but farther forward. Sometimes you can even see Wonder just dropping down from the sky. It's hilarious. And this way you can also trigger this one a little faster, and I will try to... fuck it, I'll go for a launch. Nope, that didn't work. The reason it's a little harder to do the launch on this one is because the setup for the sword itself is a little weird. But doesn't matter, I have a backup, which is fairly consistent. Because usually the way you would do it would be the crazy Gaius launch, where you just get all the way up there to the head by using physics. But doing it this way isn't too bad. It's actually faster as well, if you are very quick. I didn't get the right animation, but it doesn't matter. We got to the belly without doing the intended stuff. And since we have the Dormant Sword, it's still a fairly quick fight. And Gaius is down. And not only Gaius is down, but also Hydrus is down, because we're still doing the double thingy. One thing I gotta admit about this whole category is that I didn't do that many run-throughs of it yet, so sometimes when it comes to commentary I still get a little confused in the order of things to explain. But that's also the cool thing about it, because there's a lot of stuff to explain, and since it's also a way shorter category than the 90% normal or hard run, it could be a cool little, yeah, interesting category to show if you don't quite want the 90% normal or hard or whatever category. And it's also not as fast-paced as Boss Rush, which would usually be a little bit of a problem. Okay, now we again do the glitch, since we want to do the double thing all over again, the phalanx this time. Again, entering the fight while in the menu, and it's basically the same whole process. So we exit the fight, exit the game, re-enter the game, but then we will normalize once again on Phaedra, which is the next Colossus, but on Phaedra's corpse, which will be another interesting thing. Kind of like that. There you don't actually enter the fight, so it's a little bit more humane in that regard. But the positioning of Phaedra's corpse is still a little weird, since if you are not careful and let aggro run forward all the way, aggro can be within the perimeters of the fight, which is quite annoying to deal with, because then it loses the whole setup. But yes, what can I add to all of this? Usually I would go for the launch on that fight, but it's something that is somewhat inconsistent. So I guess I would make it dependent on how much time there is, and maybe as an incentive even to give it a try. But the alternative strat is 100% consistent and still very cool. Because the way the fight goes is that usually you would fight Phaedra by going to the tunnels and waiting for a long time to make Phaedra come towards you, and then try to search for you, bend down, and then you can climb the fight. We will just use a little bit of physics once more to climb the fight immediately as it starts. And as you noticed, I didn't grab the Dormant Sword this time. The reason for it is because it's too much of a detour and not worth it in this specific fight. It's surprising how worth it getting the Dormant Sword usually is anyway. But yeah, not in that instance. Okay, so we do the stop. So aggro doesn't run too far. You get to the corpse, do the IMG, get back into the fight. Now the corpse disappeared and Phaedra is back there. And now we enter it through the kind of left-hand side. Just because that gives you a better setup. And I'll do the safe way this time, just to show the usual strat I would go for. So you climb up the leg, move up a little, wait for an animation, jump up again, wait out another animation, and then you're basically on Phaedra's body. Not intended at all, and actually a very cool strat for beginners to try and learn, because it's fairly intuitive, but it also gives you quite the challenge, especially when starting out. Okay, now we hit this minor sigil just to trigger another animation, which usually works out, but here Phaedra is rebelling just a little. And what we do in this sigil is get a so-called plant. A plant is a specific position that you can enter by doing specific grab techniques to not get shaken out of the stab. animations, and that allows the fight to go by just as quickly as I was starting to explain it. So another swift fight, even without the Dormant Sword. And that's why we don't really get it for that one, since it's not on the way to the Colossus. Alright, just waiting for the cutscene to move on. And let's see what the next one will be. That will be Barba. Yeah, Barba. So Barba is another very cool fight in the any percent run, because we actually use a glitch there, the so-called cutscene that I will explain later. And also you'll get the Dormant Sword for that one, just because it makes the fight a lot easier, and it's barely worth it by a couple seconds if you do it perfectly. I will actually use aggro to get to the Celosia, because we will do the glitch on Celosia this time, which means it kills off Dirge, the previous Colossus before that. And that's also the reason why this category is like so insane. So many difficult Colossi that you would have in a usual playthrough. I just skipped and the playthrough of it. Right. When we pray on Barba to restore the balance in the world, I guess, and to make Barba the next target. All the defeated Colossi get these destroyed statues, so you can see the destroyed statues are like all over the place. There we go. And as we do this, as we normalize, and wait out the loads, Barba is the next target. Still a destroyed statue, but it's still the next target. A weird moment in that regard. So since you can see on the map, it actually disappeared. So it was destroyed but not destroyed anymore, and the game just doesn't understand what the hell is going on anymore. Okay, we'll stop right here. Get here. Get the Dormant Sword and move directly into a forest. To go through there towards Barba, this Colossus. The forest itself is actually very difficult to navigate, especially if you want to do it quickly, because aggro just doesn't behave in there. You want to do quick starts all the way through to get the fastest possible time, and the reason for it is the aggro just slows down the forest just to show you how beautiful it is. It's a PS4 specific thing. So whenever aggro slows down, I will make a quick stop and a quick start to get full speed once more. And sometimes if you don't stay on the road and get into the forest further down, you can't do the quick start anymore, and aggro moves very slowly. So some people call it the 17th Colossus, as well as the camera, which is the 18th Colossus. Jokingly say. Even though in this category we don't even fight all of the Colossi, so since we do 2 at a time plus 2 extra, which is the final one and the first one. Could have probably calculated how many Colossi we actually do. I think it's 8 or 9, maybe 9. Basically, we skip about half of the Colossi. And another fascinating thing about this whole category is that it's only possible to do the PS4 version due to how the item menu actually works. Since it was set up completely differently in the original version and the remaster, which is basically the original version, just a little prettier on the PS3. None of that is possible there. It's a PS4 exclusive category. And sick flip. As we get closer to the Barber fight, I should probably explain it. We will wait during the cutscene, since that doesn't count towards IGT. And the idea is to skip it in a perfect moment where Wander will just randomly spawn above Barba, and with a bit of luck we can actually grab onto his beard and skip a lot of the fight immediately. There is a backup if it doesn't work, where I will just use physics some more, but doing it this way would usually be faster if I get it first try. And this trick is like fairly specific. I think someone calculated that there's like a 4-frame window on a 60 FPS game if played on the PS5 or like I do. There's the visual cue for it, and there we go. Grabbed on. Use a little re-grab and momentum to get up here, and here we are. One-shotting the sigil because I have the Dormant Sword pick up specifically for that. Getting onto the back, doing another full stab, and there he goes. Quick as that. And even though we took a big detour to get the Dormant Sword, doing it the usual way is so much longer, but this is barely worth it. Clean fight. Also, maybe the reasons why I save so much time on the split is actually that my current PB, which I have, was done on the PS4 standard instead of the PS5, and the loading times are ridiculous due to that. So this is a category best done on a PS5 or PS4 Pro with SSD, because there's just so much loading going on with all the restarts and all of that. So now I'm gonna pray on Zenobia statue once more to get rid of Phalanx. I think that's how the logic goes. It's always one before the actual Colossus you pray on that gets defeated for some reason. I guess because since you're loading into the... Oops, almost hit the wrong one. Since you're loading into a fight, it just assumes that the previous one is down. That's how I think it makes sense, but I don't know for sure the specific technical details of that one. It's insane that it was even found. Okay. Zenobia has been done. And the next one we will go to is Kuro. Kuromori is the 8th Colossus usually, and here we are doing it as the 6th, I think. So already some out of order things, it's just that some of the earlier Colossi are best to do first, since they're closer to the start. That's why we're usually killing off the later Colossi. So pray on Kuro to reset the... Okay, stumble a little and then reset the Colossus. Back out of the fight, because killing them in the time attacks doesn't progress the story, but on the old world it is. So there's a little bit of duality going on here. The Colossi that are loaded up in the time attack, the tricking things are also loaded up in the overworld, as well as the fights that we do in the overworld to progress the story triggers. Here's once again a Colossus where I won't bother to get the Dormant Sword for, because it would be too much of a detour and it's a fairly quick fight otherwise. It's the easiest fight in fact, like on normal at least, on normal mode. You don't really need that many stabs, and it's one that can be learned fairly easily when you're starting out. There's like some crazy stuff going on if you watch the individual level playthroughs, but since those involve some RNG on the Colossus initial speed, like the climbing speed. That one isn't done in the full game runs, so I always recommend watching the individual levels for that reason. Alright. This one is in a little cavern, I guess. His own little cave. And during like the marathon setting, this would always be a good time to read donations. This run has a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of downtime, it's way less than on any percent the usual way since there's a lot less fights, but enough downtime to read donations here and there, to go into the explanations ahead of time in a reasonable speed and manner, and also, yeah, to make incentives a thing. You can, for example, pet rewards for donations. That's what we've been doing in a lot of marathons like GDQ or ESA and other smaller marathons. It's been a fan favorite because petting the horse is just a very cool thing to be able to do. Alright. Getting closer to fight. There's a little bit of parkouring going on, which can be optimized with a few things. One of which is, I'll show off just in a bit. If you whistle and then continue to run on an edge while spamming the jump button, wait, I want to show this off. It's a little tough to do sometimes. You can float in air, and that allows you a little bit of a smoother progression. Okay, now I will do the side jump here to get directly to the plateau. And move into the fight, which follows right here. The first thing we do in that fight is whistle to get the Colossus' attention to climb the wall. It's a big lizard with explosives. And once we do that, I switch to the bow and run to a specific spot where I have full view on the Colossus climb. The climbing speed can vary, which is the only RNG factor in this one. And then I shoot his legs to make him drop down, and now he's basically on a timer, where if I'm quick enough I can hopefully do one cycle. On normal, like here or New Game Plus, it's very easy to do. On hard mode that would be quite a challenge, but also doable. What I just did were cycle stabs, by the way, which allow for even faster stabbing by cancelling the stab animation and tree grabbing while doing so. It's one of those advanced techniques that allow for even cleaner playthroughs, which is great for a speedrun like that. So, just to summarize, so far I killed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's only 1, 2, 3 more left, so it is 9, if I counted correctly. Yep. Already way past the halfway point, even though Kuro would be the usual halfway point, which is very cool. Okay, so now I will prey on Argus to trigger the glitch to get rid of Zenobia. Argus is like the second to last one, which we will never fight in this category. And as you can see, getting the glitch to work timing-wise is always a hit or miss. Sometimes it takes longer, but there's never pressure. So that's usually like not a problem at all. And after doing that, we will get to Bassaran. Bassaran is a tricky one. This is like the only Colossus in the playthrough where I'm like, doing another one would be cooler, but I guess showing off the strategy is very cool, and it's also one that is fairly close to the temple, so it's faster to do this one, and it obviously makes sense. It's also another one that we will use the corpse to make the game behave, I guess, in that manner. Like, this is honestly the saddest part about this whole thing. This whole glitch can't be used to directly just to do the praying thing on Malice, get Malice as the targeted Colossus, and then just straight up go through the door early. And then you would think it would work out, but depending on the way you do the glitch, either Malice is straight up not there and you can't fight Malice, or Malice is literally like a big statue, which we will see later, but when you do it, Malice is still on vacation and not at the proper spot, even though it's tied to the ground. It's absolutely hilarious to watch those kind of glitches. Or you can also use this, if you don't do a normalization, Wander will just teleport. Like, you will go into a fight and Wander will teleport to the other Colossus, where it basically tries to load up the fight in a wrong spot, and that usually just soft locks, so straight up makes the game crash. It's very funny. But yeah, even though we have all of those low glitches at our disposal, we can't quite cut the game short to just 1 or 2 Colossi kills. It always has to be at least half of them. Or just 1 more than half, I guess, in that regard. But anyway, moving on to Basran, I have to remember to actually normalize this through the corpse, and then it's a little bit more difficult. Doing this fight in any percent is quite a pain, because it requires a very specific setup, and we use physics for that. With a side jump, it's very easy to fail, but usually I should be fine. And since here I have to go to the corpse first, it also makes the whole setup a little more tricky, since I'm coming into the fight from another side. Usually I have like ways to set it up. But yeah, it's just a little tad more difficult. So here's Basran. You will see this one later as I actually get there in the overworld. It's always fun how Wander just drops down from the height, because there used to be something to stand on there, but there isn't anymore. I think I'll use this geyser as a little orientation, just to have a safer setup here. You use like these rocks, where you stand in the middle of the rocks to have the right setup. So what will happen now is I will wait out an animation from Bassaran, and then run towards him. Okay, that should be good. Here I regrab and do a side jump, and almost did even the jump stab. It's not quite enough to kill because we don't have enough stamina, but it's, yeah, makes the fight a lot faster, and we're already done! Perfect! First try I'm always happy about. And usually I am able to do this as well, but it's still quite nerve-wracking, since this fight is fairly late into the game. Especially in this category, it's like the third to last fight you do. So this can be a slight roadblock at times. Oh yeah, and this is where the gold splits began, because I didn't have a run on the PS5 yet where I actually get to this point with first try Basran. So yeah, second to last fight is Celosia. Here we will prey on Malice once again to get rid of Argus. So it's the very last statue. And the last one we prey on, because after all of this, the game will just say, okay, you have killed all of our Colossi. Oops, I had it. God damn it. There we go. And the last prayer we will do for this glitch is on the Celosia corpse. And that has the additional beneficial effect that it won't get rid of our Dormant Sword, and we will have that one for Malice as well. Just those little optimizations where usually you would be like, okay, Slowsy only takes 2 stabs, is it really worth taking the Dormant Sword? But in that case it is, just because you will have that one for the last boss, which is Malice as well, and there it's definitely worth it. So 2 for 1 fights with this one. You also have to be careful with this Dorman Sword taking part, because if you are a little quick on the spam, sometimes it can make buttons soft lock, and then there's this awkward moment where a Wander will whistle indefinitely without being able to move, which happened to another runner of this game. It can kill a run, so that's why I always am rather careful while taking that one, especially when it comes to marathon runs, but it's usually not a problem. And even then, if it were to become a problem, you could just reset the game real quick to the last checkpoint, so it's not quite marathon threatening, I'd say. And for Celosia, there's a couple things to talk about. One of which is that it's one of the small boys. It's a very quick Colossus, and what it doesn't have inside makes up in power. It can soft lock you if you're not careful. But the whole process of killing that Colossus is by getting a torch, and with that torch you can make the Colossus afraid. And then if the Colossus is near you on a ledge, while you have the torch up, it makes the falling animation happen, to where you can then kill the Colossus. Usually that is done by scaring the Colossus away, but we do it by dropping the torch, and that way the Colossus is aggressive again, and then you pick it up in the last second, and it triggers all the necessary circumstance that makes the cutscene appear. And when it comes to getting to a Colossus, there's also a specific jump that you can do to land directly in the arena as opposed to running around, which also saves a little bit of time. So here it is. We jump off here, jump here, run around, and here we are on the ledge. And now one of those where Slowsy is already dead for the game, but we have to revive it, so to speak. So once again, doing the glitch. Always feels like on these courses, a little more difficult. Oops, I wasn't even in range. That's unfortunate. So I got it, but wasn't in range to pray. There we go. There we go. Okay. So, in the imaginary second plane kind of fight, we leave that one just to go back to the usual fight, and we still have the Dormant Sword because it doesn't get removed from the Reminiscence mode fights, which is another advantage. So, as I talked about it earlier, we get up here. Once the Colossus hits this little thing, it will drop a torch, and we jump off just in the last second before it to be a bit closer to it to avoid soft locks. Excuse me, not soft locks, stun locks. And when we get up here, activate the torch, go to the very far end of the arena, drop the torch, and then pick it back up. And that's the whole idea. Colossus gets aggressive without you having the torch, and then you pick up the torch in the last second. He's like, oh no. Well, anyway, I'm falling. We get rid of the torch, and here, with one jump stab, that's already enough to kill the Colossus because we have the Dormant Sword. There's always like a little delay there with the Colossus actually dying, because it first has to get up in the animation, but then it checks the HP and triggers the cutscene. It's not quite as instant as with the others in that regard. And here we already are past all the Colossi, besides the last one. So, as I already talked about, we didn't fight most of them, but we're still on the end stretch of the game, with way less than an hour in a usual playthrough. So that is fantastic. I can show it on the map as well. All the Colossi besides the last one are dead, even though we didn't find most of them. And hey PDO! So now the last fight will be against Malice. We have to kill the final boss to actually trigger the end of game cutscene. This is the one that's just about the longest to get to, especially if you count all the in-between things that happen later, distance-wise. And for that we have to open a door by using our swords and shine light through it. And usually that wouldn't be possible unless you're actually on the Malice fight, because you need to make the sword actually shine towards Malice to make it happen. As I talked about it earlier, although you can use this glitch that I showed off multiple times, the IMG glitch, to get there early, but Malice just wouldn't be there. Malice would be on vacation, but now that we killed all the Colossi, 2 at a time for the most part, the game is like, alright, good enough. You killed all of them in my book, even though we didn't, but nobody has to know that. And yeah, that's the main gimmick of the IMG run. It involves heavy glitching, it's a fairly quick run, and still shows off some of the cool strats that we have in the run. It's a very cool one to show, and I hope I can bring this one to English-speaking marathons, since so far it was only featured in Japanese ones. I might even do it in Russian and German-speaking ones if I get the chance to, since I will also submit this one to a couple other marathons. Alright, closing in on the Malice. Also, what will happen in a bit is quite tragic. Aggro will fall, supposedly to her death. The horse will die, but that's not actually what happens, since the horse will survive, and we will see that in the final cutscene after the fact. And I will be playing the whole cutscene for this one, not because it's necessary in the marathon kind of setting, just because I'm interested in getting my in-game time, which is the time that we measure all the runs by, and I'm just interested in what the run here is. It's nowhere near like it's nowhere near world record, but I think I can use this as a base to work towards a world record, where I would use more advanced strats and all of that. Anyway, opening the door, and here it opens, which means we have killed all the other Colossi. At least that's what the game thinks. And moving on. The dormant sword, but stamina. Run around here. Run around there, and this is there. Oh, not quite. If I can get this slow corner as tightly as possible, I can make aggro go at full speed. But usually aggro would slow down here, which she did anyway. Crumbling bridges. It's a tragic cutscene, but speedrunners get desensitized to it after a while. There is fan art of aggro having swimming gear on. Aggro is a good swimmer, I'm sure. Anyway. So now there will be one last parkour section towards the final boss. In just a bit after this cutscene, and since we can't skip it. Alright. A few things that I actually haven't talked about yet is the movement tech we use. There is a way to do double rolls, which I have done a little bit here and there, which only works on certain control types by resetting the roll animation and chaining another one into it, which usually wouldn't be possible because you'd have to wait out that animation. The fast climb here, where you kinda climb slightly to the left and slightly to the right to get a quicker animation than just climbing straight up. And a few other things. Here's the double roll, which I can show. What makes this category also a little bit more relaxing is that they don't have to do any changes in the frame rate or the controls for that one, since it skips the two Colossi where it would be required. So side jump up here, and now we enter a fight. Oh, the way we do the fight is we skip a lot of a portion of it by being very precise with the run-up, since usually you would have to go through a bunch of tunnels and barriers, but if you do it precisely you can skip all of that just with very precise movement. And these barriers just about hold off the shots of the Colossus. And to add to that, since the Colossus is shooting directly at you, it gets a little confused near the little, yeah, how would they call it? The tunnel that you would usually use, the open one, if you run above it, it just never hits you. So that skipped a couple minutes there already, and the next part is the climbing up here. Usually you would have to do a bunch of stabs on minor sigils, trigger a bunch of animations, and when you move up to one hand, then to the other hand, it's a whole ordeal. So the way to do it in a quicker fashion is to use an arrow to trigger one of the later animations way early. It's a fairly precise one, all the way up there. A little difficult to hit because it's obviously not intended to be happening. Okay, a little bit more difficult than usual even. So, and by doing that I can climb up here, switch to hand, wait out a hand animation, and then jump directly to that hand in that animation, which already skips a big part, and now with use of physics, jump all the way to a Colossus. The Colossus is confused, how the hell did that happen? Well, and now with a plan and the Dormant Sword, this Colossus will go down in 2 hits, and here we are. That was the final Colossus, actually dying without all of them actually dying. The glitchiest category that Shadow of the Colossus has to offer, and quite an interesting one to talk through, well, not even using that much time. Here we are. And this run should clock in at around 54 minutes, I guess, or high 53, which is a decent run. Also in that last cutscene, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff happening. We're Dorman, the god himself now. I didn't talk much about the lore, I realized, but the game's way of talking about the story in a very, very, how should I say, show rather than tell kind of way. If you want to experience that one, I'd recommend just playing it yourself. And since you didn't even see half the Colossi here, you're also not spoiled to any of them, and the ones you saw, you're not spoiled to the way to do them in a usual sense anyway. Oh, we are also floating because that's a thing you can do, and celebratory gesture by doing the fire breath thing. Basically we're just waiting for the guards to move on and not attacking them and moving into this corner, while glitchy floating is the fastest way to do it. Just a little longer. You can see the feet. Here they are, retreating. And the last little portion, which is still required for the run to actually finish, is to move Wander into that little well to get sealed there for all eternity or not. Because after all of this, Dorman actually fulfills his wish and Wander turns into a baby while reviving his girlfriend. So that's Shadow of the Colossus IMG New Game Plus. I'll still be waiting out the cutscene, but that's about where it would end in a usual marathon, so thank you very much for watching. Alright. A moment to relax. I gotta say, this run was fairly smooth. Just a few moments here and there where I had a little trouble with a few little details. Like actually doing, thank you so much. Actually doing the IMG trick sometimes can be painful, and I assume in a marathon setting that wouldn't get much better. As well as just like a few things on Colossi, I guess. I just realized on Gaius, going for the launch, for the advanced launch, doesn't actually work that well because the way you trigger the sword attack doesn't actually allow for that. So I would just go for IL strategy since there's no other way. There's enough backups to make it work regardless anyway, so it's not too bad of a thing. Other than that, yeah, I mean, I can't complain too much. Just overall a couple minutes that I will probably save once I start going for a record in this one. But yeah, I hope my commentary on that one was enjoyable. I have way more of a dry style, I guess, compared to someone like Ruby or even Foxy. That's why I usually get commentators, just because I feel that adds a lot to the whole playthrough and showing of the categories. Which, I mean, I definitely will for these ones. Alright. I think for something like, let's say, an ESA submission, I might even re-record this one. I don't know. I'm probably just a bit too harsh on myself. Oh, and here's aggro. Still all fine. Doing the thing. Yeah, I think I'll do some New Game Plus attempt actually after this one. Because I gotta get at least top 2. It's like one of those categories that doesn't have many runs on it. And being third, being votes behind Sean and Absol, which are both absolutely amazing players, Doesn't feel like enough to me right now. My past record on it was a 33:42, which is like 3 minutes away from Sean and 4 minutes away from Upsell. I mean, 3 out of 5. That's fairly average, I guess. I'll definitely have to cut that video a little down for the actual VOD. I was just interested in case this was a PB, which it might be, I'm not sure. It wasn't the cleanest playthrough, but it was a playthrough. But I think I'll do the attempts later on and finish the stream for now. I just wanted to do it early. Be done with it. That's a cool way to do it. I feel like if I start a stream and don't do this stuff like that immediately, I will never get to it. Just because it's such an exhausting process. So yeah, actually Sean's playthrough clocked in at 49:48 real time. So I don't even think it's a PB, even though I saved almost 8 minutes. Just the way the loading times in this one work, it's way more of a gap. Actually, who knows? Not quite sure. Did Gucci play his one on the PS5, I wonder? SSD, yes. Oh, he played it on a PS5. Interesting. Didn't know that. He got a 57, I got a 53. 55, so let's say I saved 3 minutes. Then it would actually PB. Probably close. Oh hey Gucci! Talking about you. And here you are. Yeah, I just did a little recording of New Game Plus IMG. Since I want to submit it to some marathons eventually. It's something different and kind of cool to show. Wasn't my best run, but it was clean enough. And the first one I did on the PS5. We'll see if I can eventually beat Upsol on this one. It will be hard. But doable, I think. There's a little bit of time save on Phaedra and Gaius. I'm not sure if this one is PB actually. Like it looks like one, But the PS4 loads were so like slow, but yeah, difficult to tell, let's say. It might be by just a little bit, but I won't submit it until I actually beat Sean at least. If not Upsell as well. Like, if I had to go through this run, I think... I lost a bit of time because at first I wasn't using aggro to get to the statues. Because I'm still not quite sure which one to use to get where. I gotta look at Upsell's run again. And also the Gaius, I thought I wanted to go for the launch because it's a cool thing to show, but it doesn't actually work with the current strategy. So I'd have to go for the IL setup. Phaedra was alright, not the launch. Barber was smooth. Kuro was okay. Can't complain about Bassaran either, or Celosio or Malice. I guess for Malice I would go early Arrow in an actual playthrough. I'd have to, almost. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't too bad. Oh, really? You also played on a PS5, right? Yeah. The few runs I did before that, where I never finished one, the closest I got was like... I think it was only 10 seconds away from Upso on Bassaran, but when I messed up the skip. I can definitely save some time on Upso on Gaius and Phaedra, but keeping the consistency is hard. Upso is very, very good at this game. And the shorter the runs get, the more of an advantage Upso has, pretty much. Since I'm more for the long runs. The platinum percent, the 80% hard and all of that. I think in Boss Rush Upsel could annihilate. Boss Rush seems like short enough of a category in that sense. Especially since using some of the IL strategies consistently would prove a big advantage. It's just about getting to that consistency level itself. Alright. Let's see what it is. And yeah, I think the way I will do this is I will end the stream after this and come back this evening to do some New Game Plus or HTA Boss Rush. Both of those categories are next on my list. Go for world record in. 32:42. It's a PB by a minute, by exactly a minute. Да, это PB, но я недоволен. Это я делал запись для submission. Хочу показать эту категорию. Alright, first of all I will stop the